we called This
and
is
very
Africa.
informative sessions where we're going to be speaking with a few change makers and a few key contributors in our society's evolution. So what you can expect today, rather, before I even go so far, if one asks why are we called This and
is
very
Africa,
informative sessions where we're going to be speaking with a few change makers and a few
we apologize for that technical glitch. Please enjoy Gregory Porter. I'm going to come back shortly and reintroduce the show to you. Thank you so much.
Sorry, but I had to ring your doorbell so late.
We apologize for that technical glitch.
There's something bothering me. I really am sorry, but it just couldn't wait. Is there someone else instead of me? Go ahead and lie to me and I will believe you're not in love with him, and this fool can see that the rivers of your love flow uphill to me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Sorry, but I had to ring your doorbell so late. But there's something bothering me. I really am sorry, but it just couldn't wait. With a healthy dose of make-believe, won't you lie to me and make me believe that you're in love with me, and this fool can see that the rivers of your love flow uphill to me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Sorry, but I had to ring your doorbell so late. But there's something bothering me. All night long, I just couldn't wait. With a healthy dose of make-believe, go ahead and lie to me and make me believe that you're in love with me, and oh, this fool can see that the rivers of your love flow uphill to me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Flow uphill. Hey, Laura, it's me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Flow uphill. Hey, Laura.
The world changes, revolutionaries die, and the children forget. The ghetto is our first love, and our dreams are drenched in gold. We don't even cry. We don't even cry about it no more. Are the beautiful ones really dead? Nisilibe noma, nisala ngoma. Oh, nisala ngoma. Nisilibe noma, nisala ngoma nina. Oh, nisala ngoma. Nisilibe noma, nisala ngoma. Oh,
Welcome back to Capital Radio 88.1 FM. That was Thandi Swamazwai, Nizilibele. Before Thandi Swamazwai, I played for you Gregory Porter, and the song was Hey Laura. So, a different start to the day. Pardon for a slight technical glitch that we had there. But what you can look forward to today are 6 exceptional guests. The first of whom is going to be Professor Nceba Galeni. Before I even start with my wonderful conversation with the prof, let me just quickly give you a heads up as to what you can expect today. In our first segment called Africa Unite, as I've stated, we're going to be in conversation with Professor Nceba Galeni. He will share insights on how African traditional medicine is Africa's gift to the world. Next, in Arts Matter, we speak to Lynette Garnison, who uses fashion to make a case for political resistance and identity, drawn obviously from the 160-year commemoration of the arrival of the Indian indentured slave laborers. Under the segment of Womandla, I'm going to be in conversation with Dr. Simangele Kumete, who will help us answer the question of, do SA schools need a new curriculum? On our next segment, which is Agents of Change, I'm going to be speaking with Ella McCain all the way from Chicago, who will shed more light on what it means to be black in America and what the new administration promises to bring. And lastly, for our segment, I'm going to be speaking with 2 great individuals, the first of whom is Kim Heller, who wrote a book titled No White Lies. It's going to be looking at, or rather, we're going to be asking the question if white capital or white supremacy does have an influence in the democracy of South Africa. And the last segment, we're going to be in conversation with Wethu Ngubo, who will help us unpack black health and African biomineral balance. Without any further ado, let me welcome the great prof, who's waiting patiently for me so we can start our conversation. Professor, how do you do today?
Hey, I'm doing well, my man, and thanks to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much. I know your time is quite precious. A man who wears many hats. We are indeed grateful that you took the time out of your hectic schedule to speak with us on Capital Radio. Please give our listeners a brief intro into who the prof is.
Okay, my clan name is Gaga Luba Manzendonga. I'm a biochemist by training. I'm from a little rural Eastern Cape, and I trained as a biochemist. I then went to do a PhD in Scotland. But I got an interest, firstly, in cancer and nutrition. And when you do research on cancer, naturally, you're going to get to do traditional medicine, because many doctors sometimes they say to their patients, go home, I can't do anything for you. And they try traditional medicine. Incidentally, I'm just from a funeral of a great herbalist from here, a giant from here in KwaZulu-Natal, Baba Kumalo, Julius Nyaga. He was a specialist on cancer, and I've been doing a lot of research on his medicines that work. So that's been the journey for me, and of course, this work, I am not the expert. The real people who know it are the traditional healers. Mine is to use the science to show that their stuff works, and that is the reality. That's the truth.
I love not the disclaimer per se, but I love how you boldly pronounce that indeed people that are rather under-celebrated and oftentimes are shrouded in mystery and a bit of controversy, obviously, because I feel that in certain cases, traditional healing does not dissociate itself from agriculture. It doesn't dissociate itself from nature conservation. It doesn't even run far away from the ecosystem of humanity and how we balance each other out. You're looking at the biosphere and all the elements of nature. And without any further ado, what in your experience is the state of traditional healing in South Africa? And is the government, including its legislation, adding any value in making sure that they are also recognized?
Okay, let's start with the World Health Organization in Africa, and of course globally. It's been the leader in ensuring that countries recognize traditional medicine. They must put up legislation and policies that would support the growth of this. it's an industry. Let's say it boldly so. Uh, now, because there's no way you can develop any industry system without legislation and policies. So South Africa had developed an act, the Traditional Health Practitioners Act of 2007, which would then lead to the formation of a council equal to the Pharmacy Council, equal to the Nursing Council, equal to the Medicines Professionals Council. So that's been an important step. Of course, that council needs to take its slow steps in doing this work, because unlike other councils that are working through the universities, their systems are well established. This one, you want to be sure that administratively you are fair. For Ugogo, who lives in a village somewhere, has been treating his community for 50 years, but maybe has not been to school to know how these systems should work. But it must also be careful that in urban centers, there are many clever tsotsis who might find themselves not being genuine healers, but hijack the system. So, and it's got to be fair in that way. So that's what is now in progress. The second level of legislation talks to the medicines. So the professions will be dealt with by the council. Then there's the Medicines Control Council. It's got a new name, SAPRA, which has to set up now procedures for the regulation of medicines that are being commercialized, traditional medicines. And so that's the next level of this. But the SABS has, of course, moved ahead of us. They've already set up standards, especially in terms of raw materials, packaging, and a range of things. So the industry is growing. In South Africa, it's worth about 20 billion rand.
Wow.
And it's a conservative estimate because these guys do not keep annual records of their books and their things. And we say it's a conservative estimate. This is a huge industry. Now that cannabis is coming into the spotlight, I think it's going to explode big time. And we want to encourage, I know in KZN, I don't know in other provinces, that that healers are now, I was in Amajuba district last month. They were opening up a new nursery for traditional healers. There is one in eThekwini, a nursery for traditional medicines, such that we can conserve our biodiversity. We don't need to go in and harvest in the wild, but we want to grow these herbs. KZN must not be known as a sugar cane that makes us sick. It must be known that we grow these herbs kilometers and kilometers, so as part of the land redistribution, we want healers to get land and grow herbs and commercialize them in a big time.
Thank you for that introduction and giving us a few insights into how legislation and government is trying to manage the situation and also ensure fair use, but at the same time that the rightful beneficiaries of traditional medicines, importantly also the protection of intellectual property and keeping indigenous communities in a very, what's the right word to say? Allowing them a fair participation in terms of how the entire system or even the council or even legislation is going to be formulated. But my interest also, we saw during COVID how even when Madagascar came up with COVID organics, there was a bit of mystery and there was also a bit of controversy that grew, and I did not see any government of Africa, particularly African Union, flexing its muscle and saying, Africa matters too. If we've got something that we are doing that is unique, we're going to endorse it. I think most were quick to rush after vaccines and all these funny things that were happening in the West. And my question to you, Prof, would be, how has emerging epidemics been reversed and or mitigated through traditional medicine?
Traditional medicine has a very important role in this work that we must recognize. I think what people look for are normally they look for that there's a magic bullet that people are using. Traditional medicine has been playing a role now during the epidemic. We must understand this about traditional medicine. I know that in our languages, we tend not to have this word, cho. We use in isiZulu, for example, siyelapha.
Yes.
We use that word for using medicine for prevention of infection, disease, for treatment or managing a patient, and of course, including a cure. And I know that many people have been taking traditional medicines during this pandemic, not waiting for a vaccine to come when you needed to get help now. And the Department of Science and Innovation has, of course, made a bold step in funding and seconding scientists from South Africa and mixing them with the traditional healers to study our local indigenous plants for a solution. And that work is ongoing now. I'm part of the team that is doing that research. We've looked at all the plants that we know are known in South Africa. And of course, some healers come with their own mixtures, formulations that we're working. And some results are promising that they will be found something here to use. But of course, we will then need, because this is a new disease, we will then need to do clinical trials. Such that when these things come, doctors can even know which patient do you prescribe this for, or communities, do you use this just for prevention, such that you don't suffer infection? And that's what we are in the process at the moment. So watch this space. I think there's good news coming ahead.
Definitely. My fear, though, Prof, I'll digress a bit from the questions that I wanted us to center our conversation on. My fear is that, as you've seen also during lockdown, so many people had access to umhlonyan. And when they were using it, you had a number of stories where police were coming in to arrest people who were either selling, producing, or even had access to umhlonyan. My question is, I wonder how much of the law or the legislative framework is going to also appreciate the fact that people in traditional or rural communities have been growing medicinal herbs for ages. And now that it's been commercialized, or now it's been approved as something that is worth taking, maybe there are certain mixtures that traditional healers know, or maybe there's something that a particular family has been using for ages. I wonder how then the law is going to respond or react where I'm from a traditional village and I brew my own medicine and I've got people that have been healing or helping, and now that it's gazetted or it's become law that I report what recipe I'm using and how I've been administering dosages and all of that, do you not find that maybe at some future point allopathic systems are going to come into conflict with naturopathy or homeopathy?
No. Naturopathy, homeopathy have their own council, the Allied Health Professions Council. And their own medicines have to be subjected to SAPRA. Now, in South Africa, there are these two things which we just need to watch. The fact that a healer-patient relationship is sacrosanct.
Yes.
That's how you work with your patient. It's a confidential relationship. So no one is going to interfere in that space. Where things change is when now you say you have been using this formula, helping your patients. It's a pandemic. Now you wanted to make it available to the general public through pharmacies, for example, or doctors can use it. That's when it becomes necessary then to support that, because at the moment, everything has to be, you must keep the public safety first. So whatever you want to prove first, if a medicine is safe, no one is going to follow you up and do you any trouble because you're not harming anyone. The things that needs to be followed up is when some people take this thing and then there are consequences, negative consequences. So it's not something that healers should be worried about, even communities, because these things we grow up with. Even if you didn't go to a healer, my gogo knew if I have a flu, what they could give me.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I don't think anyone is going to be harassed. And it's just that with the pandemic, I think this epidemic came with the issue of anxiety and fear.
Yes.
And then people started behaving very abnormally. You saw men driving 2 trolleys of toilet paper. It's like we were scared. And no, of course, when people are scared, their behavior sometimes is not rational.
Yes,
And
true.
so we saw people harvesting umhlonyana with its roots, literally with its roots. And then you wonder what you're going to do with the roots, because the plants needs to grow and produce more, other plants when the rain season comes.
Yes.
So, and secondly, some people were, of course, drinking umhlonyana, like boiling it and drinking it. I grew up steaming with umhlonyana. I never grew up drinking it. So there are those things where my advice has been always, you want to use umhlonyana, you've never used it before, go to a traditional healer. They will tell you.
The right system of usage. I see Prof is stuck there. I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yes, Prof.
I'm still here.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Let me not hold you up. Recently, I learned, well, because I'm too curious, I think I saw on Facebook where I think you alluded briefly to this point, where World Health Organization is now an interest in consulting with traditional medicine, obviously to stem the tide of COVID-19. And also, my interest is asking, what then are the implications for South Africa? Because I feel that traditional medicines, or traditional healers rather, are in stark competition with the pharmaceutical industry. How then will the balance be drawn between commercial interests, protecting IP, as well as ensuring that indigenous knowledge remains with the communities that it stems from?
South Africa has laws about the protection of intellectual property. We have the IKSS Indigenous Knowledge Act, which is a sui generis. It's a new way of protecting, not the one you need patents and all of that stuff. And it also ensures that the communities benefit. Now, benefits sometimes we normally measure them as royalties.
Yes.
Like, but that's not the only benefit. We're talking now land, that healers must get land and grow these things. Huge lands, they become farmers. They heal, but they also become part of the value chain of the whole medicine production industry. So that is one. There's no competition there. Now, the second part that is the WHO is trying to facilitate was a case like in Madagascar. The president there made announcement that he's got a medicine that's working. But then people want to know, what did you do? What research happened? How did you do it? How did you prove it? If you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Now, what then the WHO has stepped in was to put in a team of experts to begin to advise African countries in terms of how do you do these things. Before you make announcements, just make sure that you've crossed all the T's and all the dots. So in a way, you might say, because these things don't need to be announced by a president. I think he was very excited, which I love that. But I think when then media comes, now they're going to ask you deep medical questions, and you are a president, you don't know those things. But it became an opportunity for WHO to come forward and say, look, we will assist Africa by developing guidelines and standards that you can follow. And it then makes it easy for those medicines that have gone through that process to be marketed throughout the continent, because they've set up standards that are the same. So a product in Madagascar, in South Africa, in Nigeria will undergo the same process. Then it becomes easy to trade, especially in a continental level, but at the global level. Now, remember, some people are concerned about vaccines.
Yes. Justifiably
so. We can't say we'll wait for the vaccine. We look at our own local solutions to our problems,
yes,
and use them, and we need to do that. So if people are comfortable with the solutions that will come and they work, so be it. If people want a vaccine, it's okay, but it must be part of the choices that people have about their life and their own health.
I love the emphasis on choice, and I also on the vaccine issue. Maybe as your parting shot as well, I wonder though, how much of authority would I, if I've said I've gone to a traditional healer in Inanda, for example, and he's given me something that has tried to reverse or mitigate the effect of COVID-19, whereas the opposite end of that is going through a medical practitioner who's going to inject something in my system and then give me a certificate to say I've been vaccinated. I wonder if the certification or the authority produced by the traditional healer is going to carry the same weight and authority as that of a professional medical practitioner.
The vaccine program, of course, is a government one.
Yes.
So I don't know what rules government will put in terms of administering it.
Mhm.
But I'm saying constitutionally, our constitution says every person has a right to be treated by a health professional of their choice.
Yes.
That is important. So those things then need to be negotiated because government cannot also trample on its own constitution. There are things that they must uphold. So those things become a negotiated arrangement. Remember, the vaccine is there because we don't know what else can work. But if there are things that work and people do not need a vaccine, so you can't be forced. Someone put a gun over your head. I'm not against the vaccine.
Yes.
At all. If people use it, it's better. If it works, it's great. But I'm just saying, personally, we also must look into ourselves because you can't wait for a vaccine from Oxford. We don't develop our economy that way.
Yes.
We need to look our own solutions that will create jobs in South Africa, heal people of South Africa, and of course we can spread it to other countries. That's just my option. That's my position.
Thank you so much. Prof, I won't take so much of your time. You've helped us a great deal by unpacking this critical issue of how Africa and its value, or rather traditional medicine, are a gift to the world. Just a closing question. When are we voting for you to be the next MD of World Health Organization?
I don't know. I don't have that ambition. Thank you for your confidence in me.
That is the type of respect and the level of celebration that comes up whenever your name is brought up. And this is the type of admiration as well as the hope that young kids have when we speak about the formalization of indigenous knowledge, but making sure also that it is understood, its rightful owners are taught what the law expects and how to manage things around. But most importantly, how then do we conserve and preserve our own ways of thinking and knowing and doing, so that firstly,
Yes.
we grow our economy, but at the same time, we protect our culture and heritage for future generations to
Excellent.
bequeath it upon them. But most importantly,
Yeah.
also, a shift is made where it's no longer just Europe or America or China or any other continent that brings stuff to Africa. We also export as a value adder in the evolution of humankind. Your closing shots, Prof?
That's very. Africa is a cradle of humankind. So African traditional medicine is possibly the oldest in the world. And unfortunately, through colonialism and apartheid, it got denigrated. But I think we must turn the tide and place African traditional medicine in its rightful place.
Yes.
This is an African invention. It's an invention. It's knowledge. It's our knowledge. We must promote it. We must support it. We must celebrate.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You have a choice. I can either play for you Jonas Ngwangwa. I'm sorry I couldn't find Murwa. I found Homo. Or I could play for you Amanda Black, Avulega Amazulu. Which is your choice?
Gwangwa.
Gwangwa. Let me play for you
Yeah.
Jonas Ngwangwa. Thank you to our listeners, and of course, Professor Nceba Galeni. Thank you so much, kind sir, for your time. Enjoy your afternoon as well as the weekend ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to
care.
your fans as well.
Welcome back to This is Africa, hosted by myself, Toki Mohoto. My colleague and co-host, Palisa Shabna Mohammed, is watching us on YouTube. Hello, Palisa. Hello, hello, hello. Before we played Jonas Ngwangwa and the song called Homo, we were in conversation with Professor Ngeba Kaleni, who was reassuring us as Africans that indeed we do have a role to play. And he secured the conversation or the question we had regarding if Africa is indeed a gift to the world through its traditional medicines, its indigenous knowledge, and obviously its beautiful people. That was the segment called Africa Unite. Next on This is Africa, we are going to be in conversation with Lynette Gunnison, and the segment is called Arts Matter. Lynette is joining me. Oh, she's wearing purple today.
Hi, Toki. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Lynette?
I'm doing well. Just very nervous about our talk. I'm not great with recordings, and I hate the sound of my voice over.
Listen to this artist. When have artists ever been shy and hated the sound of their voices?
I'd like to be behind the scenes and the background, not necessarily in spotlight. Creative people not necessarily enjoy being in front.
Definitely. Well, there are creative people, and then there are geniuses who create creative people. And Lynette Gunnison is no different than those. She flies high in the caliber of grades that we need to celebrate. Hence, we invited her for an interview in order for her to share her wonderful insights and the approaches that she uses in terms of what fashion is, could be, and how it then influences politics of resistance as well as social evolution. Lynette, give us an intro into who you are so that our listeners also can have a better appreciation of the guest we are hosting.
Toki, I'm a fashion designer by profession, more specifically a fashion design educator. But I do all sorts of things. I do work on productions like the Lourdes Awards, where I'm the official stylist, talent manager. I really enjoy.
Whoa, somebody has taken us out of the conversation with Lynette. I don't know who they are or what they're trying to do. Let me just play this song before she comes back. Let me give her a second, rather. I think she's coming back to us. The gods of art are clearly not happy with this conversation. I think Lynette is going I think Lynette is going to unpack or introduce something that they're not happy to hear about. Well, here she is back on conversation with myself. Sorry about that glitch. I'm not sure why the gods of art are not happy, because they're usually happy when we host extraordinary artists. Please continue, and sorry for the interruption.
So I also recently got into natural medicines, more specifically infusing cannabis with natural herbs, and created a product called Cachet Botanicals. It's a natural herb, a herbal balm that helps all sorts of, pain, eczema, psoriasis, that kind of thing. As fashion is concerned, I don't practice as a fashion designer.
Whoa, that disturbance has happened again. Let me play her this song, by George Benson. She must give us the night. We really can't have this disturbance.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with the... Hello?
Hi, Lynette.
Hi, Toki.
I'm
not sure what's going on here.
No problem. I'm playing George Benson, Give Me the Night in the background. Let's speak.
One of my favorites.
Is it your favorite? Do you want me to play the entire song, or do you want me to fade it so you can continue with our conversation?
You could fade it. That's cool.
All right. Let me fade it in a minute and let's continue with our conversation. All right, dear listeners, sorry about that disturbance. We had to appease the gods of art so that we can have a proper conversation with Lynette. The gods are happy. Lynette is back. Let's continue with our conversation, Lynette. Sorry about that. I just want to draw your attention to recently what's been happening in the news. I think we all saw how gender-based violence has become the spotlight. And society obviously is saying this must come to an end. Women are tired, society is tired, some people are petrified, and we're not sure exactly what's happening. Do you think fashion has an influence in how some behaviors are influenced? I know some men would say this happened because a certain someone was dressed in that particular sense. As a fashion tutor, do you think it does have an influence in how some social behaviors are formed?
Look, I think those are the kind of disclaimers that people use to find a reason for the heinous act. I mean, it's just reasons they use. But babies don't dress provocatively. Go in a township, an old granny is not dressing provocatively. A woman lying down, sleeping in her bed in her pajamas is provocative. So that argument completely falls flat. It's got absolutely nothing to do with what someone wears. There are men who a woman could walk by naked and would not think in the least bit to harm her in any way, because that's not how they're built. So it's completely the way a man is built, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with fashion choice, because there are cultures where people don't wear much clothes except basic coverings of basic parts of their, I mean, even in African culture, an exposed breast is not a sexual thing. And once we start to get that out of our head, that it's the clothes that cause people to fail and to sin, it's completely not true, because it's more what's in their demented mentality, not the government at all. I think also religion in a lot of ways puts this kind of purity culture in you about the way you, and if you're not dressed in a particular way that suits the church you belong to. I mean, I grew up in a church, and for most of your life, you kind of get shamed by the older woman. You're watched by what you dressed is completely always scrutinized, rated, and judged. You're never allowed to be a young person just dressing because of this trauma put on you, this purity trauma where you've got to dress in a particular way in order to be considered holy or acceptable in a church or religious situation. I think even sometimes in Muslim culture, where a woman's dressed, the modesty dressed is kind of your work as a human being, as a person, as a woman, is all put down to how you dress. So your decency, your morals judged by the way you're dressed, and that's so completely wrong. And it's a narrative that we've got to get away from. Basically, denounce it with everything that we have in us, and it starts, I believe, with mothers and what we do, and the stigmas we attach to things with our own daughters. You know, you see someone post a picture of their child dressed in a cute little outfit, and suddenly you find trolls online saying, oh, how can you dress your child so sexually? And yet to the mother, that never crossed her mind that this was sexual, or to the father, or anything, that was never their intention. But people want to find something wrong with everything, and fashion is one of those things. As far as me being a fashion designer, that's kind of the job I was into, but I entered the clothing industry, and for me, the fashion industry and the clothing industry are two different things. The fashion industry is the fickle things about the trends and who's wearing what, and all the just BS, in my opinion. And the clothing industry is what I'm more interested in, is the people who work in the industry. It's about putting food on people's tables. It's the industry that I'm very interested in being revived. And recently government talked, oh boy, this unstable internet again. But recently government talked about, reviving the clothing industry, and it really is my heart, because that is how we put food on each other's tables, and that's by supporting local, supporting a dressmaker, supporting a local designer, as opposed to always wanting the Italian label and the French label and the American label. And we put so much value on what comes from outside, yet we have such immense creativity and treasure right on our doorsteps, just amongst ourselves, walking amongst us, and we don't even consider to give them an opportunity, a chance. So for me, the clothing industry is about putting food on people's tables. Uh, and the whole narrative of GBV being connected to what you dress has fallen flat so many times, because very often it's the very domesticated, very what's the word, subdued woman that seems to be molested and beaten by her husband. It's not necessarily a strong woman that's always in touch with self and it's there's not obviously not a clean cut. There are powerful, empowered women that are also abused, but this idea that if a woman is calm and very humble and doesn't speak up and subdued and submissive, everything will be all right is not true, because very often it's those are the women that do everything right according to how they're supposed to behave by societal norms. Those are the women that get to the worst, whereas the women that are stronger seem to be able to shake off those stigmas and almost intimidate someone who wants.
The internet is clearly not happy with our conversation. I did say perhaps the gods of art realize that Lynette is no ordinary artist, and she is a social commentator, but more than that, she is very opinionated. Let me give her a second. She's returning again because I want us to continue with this conversation. Also, Lynette, just tell us briefly before the gods of the internet also interfere with our conversation, how, in your opinion, has fashion influenced politics as well as resistance? You can look at it from the 160-year celebration of Indians who first arrived here in South Africa as indentured laborers. Some say this was, well, not some say, I actually agree. It's not indentured laborers, it was indentured slaves. How do you think, from how they dressed when they lived in India, being taken from their homes, forcefully so, I believe, being brought to South Africa, and now being forced to dress or be subsumed under a system that was alien to them, but for them to be seen as normal and civilized, they also had to survive in one way or the other. Do you feel that fashion does make political statements, and how do you think that is fused into politics of resistance and cultural heritage preservation?
Well, it actually plays a huge role because, okay, obviously when the laborers, oh bother, right. Okay, so when the ancient laborers first came here, technically they worked with slaves, even though legally they weren't called that, but in terms of what what was expected of them, yes, they were slaves. And you know, you always want to assimilate to the culture that you're to fit in. And the earlier people were often ridiculed for their choice of clothing. It, denoted they were low class and not part of. So a lot of them aspired to dress and behave just like the colonial masters. And for a long time, like my generation, you see, most of us have English names. Very few people, or if you had an Indian traditional name, you also got a calling name or a home name to make the masters, I suppose, feel more comfortable with us. And I guess in the African culture as well, they got what people as your slave name. And our entire generation, our generation kind of were almost embarrassed by their names because they had long names that nobody could pronounce. And so they anglicized it into some random name, or they changed their long Indian name and made it into something that sounded more English so that they could fit in. And then when they named their own kids, they gave them the names, most of us. Or it wasn't the English names, it was an Indian name officially, and then you got the calling name. But I found that when my generation grew up, I started to feel more pride, especially when apartheid ended. You started to feel bit more of a cultural pride, and the Rainbow Nation became something where we could be proud of who we were as well. We didn't need to be a homogenous mass. And I remember recently this conversation. Excuse me, 1 second.
No problem.
This conversation we had about cultural appropriation recently.
Yes.
Where we found that the whole concept of cultural appropriation is completely an un-Indian concept. It doesn't belong in my culture. It doesn't exist. It's always been about sharing whatever we have with the world. And in fashion, it's not any different. The world's long borrowed plenty of items of clothing, even something like a kaftan, it's a loose garment. The sari, in my opinion, is one of the sexiest garments a woman can wear. And it doesn't matter what size you are. It's a truly one size fits all, suits everybody as well. Please excuse this cough. It's a size issue.
No problem. And also, Lynette.
Okay, so with back to the indentured laborers and fashion, earlier this year, I'd had a meeting at our local tourism offices on the Bluff in Durban.
Yes.
And I was very surprised to hear that the original Indian indentured laborers, when they first arrived, their very first home, the quarantine site that they lived on, was actually on the Bluff. And I felt a little not knowing this, because I thought it's like common knowledge. And how is it such an important piece of my history? No. But from asking around and from, finding out from other people, this wasn't common knowledge to everyone. But from what I hear now, it's since been added into history textbooks or histories, the students now learn this fact. But the interesting thing was that this quarantine site, which in essence is the Indian people, it's our ancestral ground, because it's the very first place that our forefathers lived in this country. It's there, but there's no memorial on it. There's nothing to indicate what it is and the sacredness of this. And I found that was quite a sad thing, to have this precious site there that denotes the beginning of our 160-year history, which is quite a big deal. And so we did inquire with the local tourism officers. They were expected to, okay, let's get the stable connection back. Okay, so so Durban, which is the South Durban Basin, which is in charge of tourism in the south of Durban, is very excited to work with the community to erect some sort of monument or some way to immortalize the sacredness of this actual location, and just to honor the sacrifices our forefathers made. What we'd like to at some point have a fashion show or an art exhibition on the site, where we could have people visit an exhibition, and still very much in the early stages of planning, but it's something that we want to execute, and more especially to turn this site into something that people can visit, and just honor the legacy of Indian people in this country, firstly as South African. But the thing that we've been very cognizant of is that the people who lived on this sacred land were not South African, they're Indian. And we'd love to work with the Indian government or consulate or some agency to honor that, because to honor their presence on our land as well.
Definitely. It's a history worth celebrating. Your parting shot, Lynette, in terms of what do you feel needs to be done? You obviously stated that the fashion, obviously, and the clothing industry are two different things. What do you feel needs to be done to revive the textile industry? That's one. Number two, how can Commercial Road, which is quite influential in the clothing sector in Durban,
be, what's the right word? Be recognized for the value and contribution it's made to the fashion industry?
So I've long said that the wealth of knowledge, everything that you need to do to know about reviving the clothing industry, you will find in Chatsworth, Phoenix, Wentworth, Newlands East, because the entire clothing industry, especially in KZN, was built on the backs of the Indian and colored women, or the Indian and colored community as such, because they seem to have been more prominent in the factory workers in the earlier days. You know, at the start of the heyday of the clothing industry, seemed to be dominated by the Indian and colored community, especially the women. Mm-hmm. And the clothing industry in this country was phenomenal. Our exports, the quality of the clothing that you can get in South Africa, even our shoes are spectacular in the way that it's made, the absolute detail, the quality standards is very high in this country. And all of these women who lost their jobs have all the knowledge of this excellent, high quality clothing, but we needed to harness that. We needed to get these women to teach other women, you know, when you look at elderly people who have knowledge, they kind of, after a while start to feel useless because all this, nobody cares what I know anymore. But imagine how valuable an elderly person will feel. He says, hey, you know how to do this. Can you please teach a younger person how to do it? In that way, we could almost empower the older people to earn a little bit of money, and they're passing on valuable information into a whole new generation of people. And that's one way of harnessing it. All of that valuable information is going with them to their graves. And it's very sad. I remember attending a funeral of my dad's brother-in-law, so an aunt's husband. And he'd worked in the clothing industry for maybe 30 years. And when he died, at his funeral, when the clothing industry closed down, at his funeral I heard about how much knowledge he had in the clothing industry, how he was involved in training, and his job to train machinists. And I thought, what an absolute waste. Here's this man who's been without work for like 20 years, with all of this knowledge, and we get all this cheap rubbish from China, whereas our people are starving, unemployed, unable to put food on their table because we want something cheaper. And it's not cheap. It's not a bargain. Someone else paid the price.
Yes.
If someone couldn't put food on their table, they're paying for your bargain. Let's get this. Right. So if someone was unable to educate their children because you needed a bargain, if someone couldn't send their child to school, couldn't clothe them and feed them, that blood is on your hands because you wanted something cheaper. I follow a movement called Fashion Revolution. Mm-hmm. What Fashion Revolution started in 2012 when a factory in Bangladesh, the Rana Plaza factory, collapsed with all of its workers in there. And something like 1,200 plus people died in this tragedy. This factory was making clothes for places like H&M, Zara, Topshop, all of the high-end places. The building was unsafe, but the workers were locked into the building so that they could complete these orders. And after these 1,002 people died, not one single of those large corporations took any responsibility, did anything. And as a result of that,
we seem to have lost the connection with Lynette. Let me play out with two songs. One is by Jidena, a little bit more, and after that, I'm going to play Beyonce. The song is called Already. Thank you, Lynette, for sharing your insights with us. We may need to end our conversation there. Thank you so much, and apologies for the hiccups and the distraction in our technological connection. Please enjoy the song. It's played on your behalf as we celebrate you as an artist. Have a good weekend. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure,
Bye.
Lynette. Cheers.
Are we ever gonna know? You should make up your mind. Take you back to my shrine. And I'ma need the whole night. And a little bit more. They don't know how you like it. I'ma need the whole night and a little bit more. They don't know how you like it. I'ma need the whole night and a little bit more. I got the feeling you've been here before. You need it tonight like a weekend ago. You in or you out or you playing a folding. We in need of a moment. Are we ever gonna know? You should make up your mind. Take you back to my shrine. Don't you pay them no mind. Let them be, let them go. She was made for my eyes. We escaped the times. And I'ma need the whole night. And a little bit more. They don't know how you like it. I'ma need the whole night and a little bit more. They don't know how you like it. I'ma need the whole night and a little bit more. The party gets
Capital 88.1 FM. Email us at onair@capitalradio.co.za.
Long live the king, you a king, you know it. King already, you know it. Top everything, you know it. King already, you know it. My body, soul, got a king body. Body gon' shine, bling, bling body. Calling all the shots, ring, ring body. Crown on your head, got a king body. Long live the king, you a king, you know it. King already, my baby, you know it. Top everything, you know it. King already, you know it. Shine already, it's time already. Align already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already. The line already, it's time already.
Try to stop it, me say no, no, no. Royalty say don't you, no, no, no. Try to stop it, me say go, 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 go. Bubble up and watch it go, 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 go. Be ruler, yeah. Everybody on the conga, yeah. Every king be stronger, yeah. King the rule them longer, yeah. Remember who you are, oh. Real king always be no. Give up be brave, oh. And show your people my love. You sang my ready, I say you sang my ready. You line already, I say you line already. Only you got the remedy, I say you got the remedy. Shine your body, shine your body.
Long live the king, you know it. King already, you know it. Top everything, you know it. King already, you know it. My body, soul, got a king body. Body gon' shine, bling, bling body. Calling all the shots, ring, ring body. Crown on your head, got a king body. Long live the king, you know it. King already, my baby, you know it. Top everything, you know it. King already, you know it. Shine already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already.
Shine already, it's time already. The line already, it's time already. Shine already, it's time already. The line already, it's time already. Try to stop it, me say no, no, no. Royalty say don't you, no, no, no. Try to stop it, me say go, 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 go. Bubble up and watch it go, 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 go.
Oh, diamonds on my fist, fighting damage, oh. Come and rest your head, take your crown off, oh. Woke up in the phone, need to take it slow, oh. He said I'm moving too fast, need to take it slow, oh. Take it slow, oh, oh. Take it slow, oh, oh. Trying to take my baby home, oh, oh. Take it slow, oh, oh.
Remember who you are, oh. Real king always we know. Give up be brave, oh. And show your people my love. You sang my ready, I say you sang my ready. You line already, I say you line already. Only you got the remedy, I say you got the remedy. Shine your body, shine your body. Be your own king, make nobody come rule your world. Yo, 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 yo. Be your own king, make nobody body come rule your world. Ah, be your own king, make the body come rule your world. Yo, 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 yo. Be your own king, make the body come rule your world. Long live the king, you a king, you know it.
The song is finishing now. Let us start our conversation. That was Beyonce featuring Shatta Wale, and the song before that was Jidena, A Little Bit More. I was in conversation with Lynette Gunnison. It's a pity she left our talk before I asked her about the funny discovery she made. Apparently, her surname is Gunnison, which is Indian, but people from Johannesburg and Cape Town assume that her surname is Ghanisan. Don't go there, boy. So I wanted to ask her about that, but unfortunately, she's now gone. Next, in a segment called Womandla, where we celebrate exceptional women who are key contributors in our social evolution, but more than that, to innovate and lead with grace. I'm in conversation with Dr. Simangele Kumete. Dr. Kumete, Sawubona Molo Avusheni Kunichua. Bonjour. Is it bonjour? Let me stop before I bite my tongue. Let's.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. Greetings to the listeners and greetings to you, Toki. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. Please give us a brief intro into who you are so that our listeners can hear the type of great guests that I interview on the show.
Thank you so much for that. My name is Simangele Kumede from Durban. It's very difficult to introduce myself. Basically, I don't even know where to start. But first of all, I always say I'm a child of God. I think that's very key to mention on my side. After that, besides that, I'm an academic. I'm a researcher, like you're saying. I'm an innovator. I'm a skills developer. So there's a lot. So let me just end there in terms of introduction.
No problem. I've titled our conversation, Do SA Schools Need a New Curriculum? I'm asking this because I think as an academic and a researcher, you've seen and experienced the evolution of education in South Africa. My particular interest as someone who worked in the human resources industry for over 6 years was how disjointed education was from the labor market. Share your sentiments in terms of what you've seen and what have been your contributions or criticisms even of South Africa's curriculum.
Thank you so much for this question, Toki. I will just start with sharing my feeling. Like I said, I'm very broad when I speak. So one of my key aspects first, before I just get into your question, one of my key aspects, I'm the business administrator. That's why I'm saying that. My thesis, I'm a doctor. I have a doctor of business administration.
Mm-hmm.
So why am I mentioning that? All what I do, it's all like whenever I do something, I'm in business.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's why I'm mentioning that I'm in business. Firstly, even when the child is born, on my side, I'm in business. Why I'm saying I'm in business? I see somebody to be nurtured, to be developed, not just by me only, by me, the community, the schools, and everyone,
Mm-hmm.
The civil society.
Yes.
So that's why there's nothing that I take light on my side. So coming to how my feeling is in terms of the education system, particularly South African education system. Firstly, I always believe in basics first. Why I'm mentioning basics? There is no institution that hasn't got values, that hasn't got mission and everything, But my main question, if I can just think, or that I always ask myself, do even our teachers first know the values now of their institution? By institution now, I'm talking about the education system.
Yes.
Because we can't start by saying we are educating our kids, not knowing the values first. So firstly, the main value that is even mentioned in terms of the value perspective of the education, there is people and people excellence, teamwork. So my thinking is that, do people even know about that? You know. So another aspect that I always think, you know, if you think, they think about, I think in 2019, 2017, I'm just making a practical example here.
Sure.
Between 30 and 50 students attended grade 10, you know, but but only between 7 and 23% go to tertiary, and that bothers me. Like in terms of what happens to the rest. So that's why I'm saying all what I always think about business in everything. There is nothing that I take light. Even my home, I treat it as my business. So another aspect, if I think of the criticism perspective or the critic, I don't want to say criticism. Firstly, we can't rubbish what our government has done. They've tried a lot. They've tried a lot, but there is always a room of improvement in everything that we do. And what is main key is the supply and demand now of teachers. Do we even look at the supply versus demand, or we just we just follow the passion, or is it a passion again, or is it about money, or is it about because probably there is no space and there is only a space for teaching. Now I just need to teaching. So those are the aspects that pose a concern on my side. And another aspect that I always think about, the issue of the high cost and language policies to affluent areas. And here I'm talking with conviction, because I've got kids as well, you know. I'll make an example. I'm not going to mention the name of the school or whatever, but I'm just making an example. I used to work across the road in one of the affluent school, and my child was in one of the junior primary school there. So to me, it was like by virtue given that okay, my school will migrate to this other school for grade 8. And he tried a lot, into academic-wise, and even became the leader, the student leader, something like that, just to make sure that he gets accepted. And can you see the challenge our children have to get into to be accepted? Yes. Playing to be accepted. So those are the issues. But guess what happened? Still, my kid was not taken. Now I'm talking from experience now, so it's something I know. And I had to take the route of the higher education, the education department. And do we really have to play the game that way? I don't think so. If the game is just fair, it has to be fair, you know. And another issue is the transformation. And please allow me, because I will talk on a junior perspective and on a higher academic perspective.
Sure.
So my thinking will be very broad a little bit. So there is an issue of the transformation, the access, and the success, as well as the equity. So those are the things that that we need to look around in terms of, like when we look around our education system as well. And another aspect that we come across, the world-class system with international standard assessment. Are we really there? Because remember, we said we are critiquing. Are we really there? So that's why I said initially there is always a room for improvement.
Yes.
And another issue that I may cite is the issue of the teacher attrition or turnover. You know, in terms of stats, according to stats, 16% every year, which means it's over 1 million of the teachers. They leave the system. It's a
and
given,
it's mostly the public system, isn't it?
Yes. And another issue that we are having, we are saying, okay, there is another aspect that I want to mention here. like right now, we are talking about 14.2 million student enrollment in 2020, just in 2020. And there is another challenge that which doesn't make business sense to me, because we always say we've got an issue of shortage of teachers, but I can count so many unemployed graduates, teachers that are there. So again, that makes me ponder and think: is our system okay? And there are so many things that I may cite. And if I may take you back from 2017 again, the total number of 1,052,080 learners enrolled in grade 10, and only 409,906 learners passed matric. Wow. And you can see that's not even 50%. And and I'm talking about 419 now who passed matric in 2019. Remember, I'm talking about 2017. These people were doing grade 10. So if we are doing our business correctly, we would have made follow up, for this. So the expectation is that at least 100, like just 1 million at least, make it to matric. But why is it happening that we only have got 409,000? What happened to the rest? And who is making it follow up to the rest? So, and that rest is more than 60% if you look at what is happening. And another aspect that I cited earlier, the teaching, is it about calling? Is it about money? Or is it because the program was available or the space or there was a bursary, to access, which made it easier? So, and if you think about those aspects where people would think about probably the bursary, then the bursary versus passion, is there any balance if you think of those aspects? So, and another aspect that is a little bit key to me, COVID basically took us by surprise, and it showed us something. And it
affected so many things.
And which tells me that, yes, so it taught us so many things, but it exposed us. So we can boldly say it exposed us somehow. Why am I saying that? I've been observing, the stats for the private school learners now. Can you believe that it's 83.5% continued to with their education, business as usual.
Wow.
With minimal disruption. Wow. And that's researched. It's something I can retrieve for you. And many public schools were restricted to radio, television, and textbook only. So those are the challenges that we really are coming across. Coming to innovative solutions, because we can't simply say we are looking at criticisms only.
Yes.
What do we think can happen? Remember, I initially said I'm a child of God. So in almost all of the things that I do, my belief is, firstly, we need God. We really need God. He is the center of everything in all what we are doing. And what is next? We really need to work around changing the world education competencies. So which means, because it looks there are cracks. Yes. There is a gap and cracks in terms of education competencies. And again, I'm a strong believer in entrepreneurial education schools, because if you look at the unemployment rate that is taking place, we are producing unemployed graduates. And again, on that, I'm also a living testimony. I've tasted that medicine. I've also have got a child here who is an engineer. And interestingly, on that note, we always say we don't have engineers in South Africa. But I asked myself, but I've got an engineer, an unemployed graduate engineer, civil engineer sitting here at home. Well, what type of engineers are we looking for? Well, why did we produce this engineer if this engineer will sit with me at home here? Yes. Those are the issues that we really need to interrogate and come up with something. And another aspect probably that we may think our education needs to consider implications of 4IR, because there is this belief that 4IR is taking our jobs. But I think I tend to differ. I always say if you are efficient in your place, there is no way that you can be replaced. You are replaced because there is this issue of inefficiency. I may be harsh on that, and I'm known to be harsh when talking, unfortunately. But that's the reality. That's how I look at things. And again, there's another interesting thing, the technological aspects, the digital literacy. And in terms of South Africa, it's only at 37% of South African has consistent internet access. You know, that's according to Stats SA. Only 37% South African has consistent, I'm talking about consistent internet access. Even right now, as I'm talking to you, my system keeps on telling me that my internet is unstable. So we don't know how long this is going to go. So those are the issues that we are experiencing.
What do you feel in your experience?
And another aspect, probably I have talked.
My question was.
You are cutting?
Yes. What I was asking, what do you feel in your experience needs to be done? Is it because these things are happening due to a curriculum that needs to be revised or scrapped altogether, or there's something lacking that we are not getting as South Africans?
I was coming. In fact, that was going to be my next point, because the next point is the issue of the curriculum revamping. So that's the key aspect. I even made an example here. I just thought, we've got LO. It teaches about life orientation and what have you, but it needs to be future oriented, not just tells us what is actually happening here, like currently, but it needs to be future orientated. It needs to be able to allow us, to face the world.
Yes, true.
It not just to tell us about the existing policies, the HIV that we know now. I'm not rubbishing it, but I'm saying we can improve it. So that's why I'm talking about revamping, and above all, the decolonization of our schooling system. So to me, that is very key. And why I'm saying this without glorifying the legacy of decolonization, inequality, and poverty. Why am I saying this? If I think of the years, it's over 24, how many years now? Since 1994, it's 25 years. It's 25 years already. And but we are still talking about, we used to talk about decolonization. We used to talk about inequality. We used to talk about poverty. But can we focus on decolonizing now? Because now it's like we glorify all these legacies now. Those legacies. Let's just work way through, other than just glorify. Even if you look at the papers, the previous papers, people, it's like, you are not allowed to write the paper without talking about poverty. I know that it's a reality, but is it helping us to talk about it? If we are not doing about it, it's not helping us at all. So let's just stop glorifying it. And another aspect would be the indigenous languages. If we can respect our indigenous languages, I think, let me just end there for now.
No problem. Maybe as your closing remarks, because I see time is running away here, I didn't realize that we had so many important points to cover, and I'm sure we could have covered much more had we had more time. Maybe a closing remark on your part. If you were to become president or minister of education just for a day, what would you change? What is your wish list if you were to become Minister of Education?
Thank you so much for the question. I think I've got so many things that I would change. Firstly, our system, our political system, is dominated by political organizations. There is nothing wrong with that. But where is the civil society? Why am I asking those questions? I'm reminded of the 17 million people that registered for voting in 2014, and we've got 58 million people. And you tell me, because that's not even 50% again. So which means there are people who are not politically affiliated, who don't have a faith in our political system. But if if we can have a forum that represents the civil society in the parliament, probably about 20 people representing, I'm sure so many people can vote. So that's what I would change first. And another thing that I would change, it would be the eradication and entitlement by involving communities in their development, as opposed to thinking on their behalf in terms of what they need. And why am I saying this? Can you see the arsonist mentality that is taking place? Why? It is because people they just feel, they don't feel the pain of the buildings and what have you. I know that might not be nice, but it's something that is a reality. But if people can, like if we are saying we're building houses here, let the community get involved in building the houses for their community. If it's hospital, let them build their hospital. They will definitely protect. They will know it belongs to them. And another aspect, I would get hard on crime and the GBV, the gender-based violence. But on the other side, I would also get harder on those false accusers, because in the midst of the GBV, there are also false accusers as well. Who are, like, if I feel I've got a crush on someone and that someone is not, taking heed, so I would simply accuse that person of GBV. So I would be even more harsher on that one. So another one, I would revisit licensing department and home affairs services, as well as SASSA services. So I'm trying to be quick because of time.
No problem.
I would also think around the self-defense the self-defense kits for women who are victimized. I would revise the SA justice system. And I think I would think of the body system schooling, where somebody would hold someone by hand and hold that person onto towards achieving the goal. And I would also work around having the global disaster preparedness, like having a forum in terms of the global disaster preparedness, not to be taken by surprise of everything.
As we saw happening during COVID-19, in Sesotho we say "Re a leboha," and words cannot fully express how appreciative we are of your wonderful insight. Hello there, beautiful Ella McCain.
Hello.
How do you do, my dear?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good, thanks. Can you hear the song playing in the background?
I could before, and then you started talking, so now I can't hear it.
Oh, because we connecting or communicating offline. We're going to start in less than a minute's time. I don't know if I should introduce you by playing This Is America by Childish Gambino.
You can if you want. It's a good song. People like it.
All right, let me fade.
Some people like it, some people don't. Yeah, depending on who you ask. Yeah.
Let me fade the song that's currently playing now and jump to Childish Gambino, and we're going to talk immediately after Childish Gambino.
I'm ready.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll speak soon.
And we're going to talk immediately after.
That was Judith Sepuma, and the song is called Me Mutswadi. I was playing that as a parting shot to the conversation we had with Dr. Simangele Gumete, a very opinionated and well-researched individual. She has a doctorate in business administration, and the conversation we had was around, do South African schools need a new curriculum? Precisely because under COVID, she succinctly said we were exposed. And it also showed how unprepared the education system in South Africa is. Strangely, funnily, or unfortunately, South Africa is rated as one of the key economic contributors in Africa. But COVID showed us flames, as the young ones would say. Listen to This Is America by Childish Gambino as we introduce Miss Ella McCain from America.
You slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Look how I'm living now. Police be tripping now. Yeah, this is America. Guns in my area. I got the strap. I gotta carry 'em. Yeah, I'ma go into this. Yeah, this is gorilla. Yeah, I'ma go get the bag. Yeah, or I'ma get the pad. Yeah, I'm so cold like yeah. I'm so dull like yeah. We gon' blow like yeah. Slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. Look how I'm kicking now. I'm so pretty. I'm on Gucci. I'm so pretty. Yeah. I'm gonna get it. Watch me move. This is Sally. That's a tool. Yeah. On my Kodak, black, ooh, know that, ooh, get it, yeah, work it, 100 bands, 100 bands, 100 bands, contraband.
We have less than 2 minutes left. Continue dancing. As soon as the song is finished, then we're gonna start our conversation. It's hyping me up. It's encouraging some holy anger within me. I'm not sure why. Let me go back to the song. We have less than a minute, right? We're going to talk now.
Get your money, black man. Black man. 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 Get down.
Childish Gambino right there with This Is America. What a fitting introduction to another change agent, She's a pacemaker, and she's the next president of America.
Oh my God.
Miss Ella McCain, all the way from Chicago, or they call it Chi-Town, all the way from Chi-Town. How do you do, Miss?
Thank you so much, Toki. Yes, I'm so grateful to be here with you today. Hello from Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. Yes, good day, everyone. Good day.
Thank you so much for honoring the invite to be with us and share a few insights, maybe, or personal experiences. I'm not sure how this will be approached, but the song is quite a fitting introduction. When I visited the States, I'd only seen through music videos when they speak of the Bloods and the Crips. I did not know about the social injustices that exist there, because the America that we see oftentimes in Hollywood is so glamorized. You almost want to be in Wall Street. You almost want to be in Washington at the White House. You almost want to live in the leafy suburbs of Bel Air, California, Pasadena, and wherever else where the posh people are. But when you walk the streets and you start seeing a young child wearing red, and almost everyone in that area is wearing red, you know you are where the Bloods are. And if you go to another area and you see blue, you know this is not just Republican and Democrats. This is the real America that we hardly ever see in the news. And the background of our conversation obviously is borrowed from the injustices that we've seen in the media, where disproportionate incarceration rates of minorities, particularly black males. We also look at police brutality meted out against black men. And we also look at why does it always become a hyped up issue if a woman or a person of color, either like Mae Harris is now going to be the VP, everyone is getting excited, and there's this sense of expectation by the minorities that a savior has come. But some obviously have the pains of the Obama administration in its area and how it did not deliver. We also have our own pains in Africa regarding the disconnect that happens between us as brown-skinned people who live in different continents. Hence, I asked you to be here so we can briefly just speak about these conversations frankly. Give us an introduction as to who Ella McCain is. Leave out the glow. We can see the glow. It's bright. It's illuminating us. Who are you?
Thank you so much, Toki. Yeah, and everything you said, we'll definitely touch on sort of in our chat. But my name's Ella, as I mentioned. I'm a YouTuber. I have a new YouTube channel. You can check it out. I interview a host of people that are sort of pushing the culture forward around the world, right? So this is everything from songwriters who are making music in Korea to local Chicago artists who are making really great music to diplomats to TikTokers and all that jazz, right? So there's something sort of for everyone on the channel. In addition to this, in my day job, I work as an international program manager at Chicago Sister Cities International. We have 29 sister cities around the world, including Durban, South Africa. And we do a host of things, but mostly events, delegations, and things like that, right? So a couple of initiatives that we have are our Global Youth Ambassadors Leadership Program, where we invite young women ages 14 to 16 to Chicago to learn about leadership, advocacy, and activism. And we've been lucky to have 3 young women from Durban so far. So we're really glad, but we hope we can get more to apply. So definitely if people are interested, they can reach out. We'd love to share information about that. And another initiative that we do is, of course, social services exchanges, where we invite social services professionals to Chicago, and then they go back to the reciprocal sister city. And they share best practices around social work. And that was the delegation last year in June, in which I was very lucky to meet Mr. Mohoto from Durban when he came to Chicago. Yeah, and it was such a great week. You all got to see really, all of our social services work that we're doing here in Chicago, and then you were able to sort of take that back, right? So that's sort of the basis of those sister cities and the work that I do.
But you didn't mention that you're quite fluent in Japanese.
Yes, I am fluent in Japanese, Spanish, a little bit of Korean, a little bit of Chinese, trying to learn all the different languages in the world so that I can really communicate sort of with everyone, because I really see the power in languages and being able to connect across the world. So yeah, definitely love me some languages.
Definitely. I'm mentioning Japanese particularly because my name is Japanese. My surname, I'm told, is Asian too, but I'm as brown as they come. I've got no idea what Japanese do. I know they've got a very sophisticated way of holding their very, very tiny tea, which I wouldn't enjoy. I think I'll take the whole jug if ever I'm offered. But I think there's culture and there's taste. And obviously, there's a bit of learning and sharing that takes place when different people unite.
Why I'm saying this seems to have eluded the American society. I mean, sharing, I mean, looking at the next person as an equal. I mean, also looking at, perhaps one would say, certain race groups in America should be a bit more sensitive toward the black races. Because you look at the history of racial segregation, you look at the history of slavery, or even look at the history of current social injustices that are happening, and still black people need to ask, do Black Lives Matter? What is your perspective in terms of, do Black lives really matter in America?
Yeah. So I would say that yes, of course, right, without hesitation. And what I also tend to say is all Black lives matter, right? And when we say that over here, what we mean is that everyone Black, no matter their gender, sexual orientation, background, their lives matter. Because a lot of times there is an erasure of trans Black lives. There is an erasure of dark-skinned Black lives when Black Lives Matter is said, right? So I always start with, yes, Black Lives Matter, but all Black Lives Matter. And that can ruffle some feathers sometimes, right? Because then you get into the, some people are like, well, all lives matter and things like that. It's like, yes, obviously. But what we're talking about is the fact that there are clearly distinctions that are, imposed on Black people. So I do my best to sort of advocate and support the people that are on the ground doing these Black Lives Matter, protests and things like that, because I tend to be pretty loud in general in my personal life, and especially when I'm passionate about something. But I really want to make sure that I am amplifying the voices of the people that are doing the work for Black Lives Matter across Chicago, across the United States, right? It is really important that we raise their voices because they get silenced often in the media, or you don't even know, for example, who started Black Lives Matter, right? There are 3 women that started it, but people don't know their names. And that's sort of on purpose, right? They use that platform to sort of raise up the people that are doing Black Lives Matter. But they tend to also be silenced, and you don't really know sort of what's going on, right? So I recognize, though, that can put a lot of pressure and weight on those people and on their shoulders, and it allows me to sit in my privilege. So I'm also learning ways that I can show up sort of every day, right? I'm learning different ways that I can show up in my advocacy. And the only thing I'll say about that as well is that I'm just a mere voice in this world, like worldwide web, right? And in society, and while I have my opinions on things, let it be known, but I am not an expert necessarily on certain issues, right? But I will do what I can with my voice to sort of speak up for these communities, especially Black people, and hopefully, we can create some change, because it's really, really imperative that we emphasize that all Black lives matter. Especially in 2020, and it's been a wild year, and as we move forward.
Definitely. And the election of VP Harris in South Africa has been met with, I think, a bit of hesitation, and some are looking back at the Obama era, Some have even gone as emphasizing to say she's not Black, she's colored. So already they are registering within their heads that her focus and attention will be more toward pleasing the white people who elected her, then she would pay attention to the real issues that affect Black people. What's been your reaction in terms of her election?
Yeah, so from my experience, right, because I can't speak for everyone, but I think it is very, very significant that she is the first Black South Asian woman to be elected into office, right? And we see this being celebrated by women, Black women, and for the first time, we're really seeing South Asian women being celebrated on a national scale. And I think she's in a very interesting position with regards to her identity. She has to walk this very fine line between the Black identity and the South Asian identity. But you also mentioned that a lot of people would see that as her sort of catering to the white audience, right? She's just got she's got this really difficult position that she's in. And it's something that I think a lot of Black women face, right? We're sort of they try to box us into these schemas that people have in their minds of what a Black woman should be, how she should speak, how she should take up space or not take up space. And so I think she is walking a very fine line of trying to be like, look, I am a Black woman, but I am also a South Asian woman, and I am the vice president-elect, and so I am going to represent everyone in this country, right? And I think in some ways I can personally relate to that based on my personal experiences growing up, right? I have Black family members, I have white family members. There's sort of this dichotomy. I'm never really Black enough for the Black people, but I'm too white or too Black for the white people. There's just sort of constant dichotomy that a lot of Black women have to walk through, right? And there's code switching, of course, right, which could be a whole nother conversation, but she has to sort of code switch on a national scale, which is just a really, really difficult thing to do. And so I think on the whole, a lot of us are celebrating this, if only because the past 4 years have been very, very interesting for
Very
America,
colorful.
right? So I think on the whole, we're celebrating the incoming presidency and things like that. But I will say that I personally have some reservations, right? And if you will, my reservations come from her previous work as a prosecutor and as a senator, right? There are some things that I did not always agree with what she did. And so I would say that aspect, right? I think every time, what we're allowed to do is question, right? And what we're allowed to do is give her the space to answer those questions and to sort of really create effective change. And so I'm hesitant, but I'm open to what's going to happen, right? And I think the other issue is that all of the issues that Vice President-elect Harris and President-elect Biden are going to deal with are systemic issues, right? And then until you have a sort of full turnover of the really root issues, it's really going to be difficult to create the change that I think people think happens overnight, right? So until more young people are elected and given the chance to create real change, I can't get too excited. But what I will say is that this administration is definitely changing some things already. They have the first all-female communications team. That's like the first and ever of the presidency, right? There are a lot of firsts with this administration coming in. And so I think they're listening, and I think they're going to do their best to really create effective change, but it can't happen overnight, right? And that's a type of pressure that, once again, is put on Black women, right, to sort of solve the problem, for her to sort of, become the savior for everybody, right? Like that's a lot of pressure that's put on Black women and Asian women as well, right? And so it's just something that I think we have to have a little bit of grace and empathy with as well. And with regards to the Obama administration, I would say that there was definitely a sense of pride that I felt being able to vote for the first Black president, right? It was my first time voting. I just turned 18, so I was able to vote. And it was really exciting to see him on stage in Grant Park. I mean, I wasn't in Chicago, I was actually in California at the time, but seeing him on TV and all those different things was really great. But I do think he was under a lot of pressure to sort of fix these issues that, as I mentioned, can't be fixed in more than, in 1 or 2 terms, right? It sort of is going to take almost twice as long as America's been around. It's a very young country, right? We've only been around sort of 200 years. And the structures that we have in place are going to take almost twice that amount to solve, right? And it was unfortunately probably built that way, right? And so the people leading the change, though, right, the people on the ground, the Black Lives Matter protesters, those people that are making the change are not the ones in power, right? And so we're electing these people into power, hoping that they're going to, speak for our constituents and things like that. But it also takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of policy change and things like that. So I say that, based on my opinion, I think, Obama did the best that he could in the time that he was given, but he can't fix everything overnight. And we, unfortunately, are just now getting, leaders that are Black into these spaces. And I think there's just this enormous pressure on them to really change everything overnight. And it doesn't work that way, right? So yeah, I think that's sort of.
I remember also when I was in Chicago, there was a lot of excitement after the new mayor was elected. I think also there was that sentiment of pressure that is placed on her to now suddenly speak for everyone and change everything overnight. And almost everyone was raising their hands and saying, listen to me first. But exactly where do you draw the line? Because America is seen both as a world leader, but also it also has its own teething domestic issues, right? And now we're speaking of this can't happen overnight. At the same time, we're saying, you've seen the pressure of the Black Lives Matter movement. It wasn't just about America. It was about every Black person around the world saying, I matter, respect me. I also need to participate as an equal member of society. Do you think that it's going to affect any reforms in terms of the disproportionate incarceration rates that I spoke about earlier, as well as also I think the standards of living, as well as how COVID in particular was seen to be affecting mostly black populated areas as opposed to the affluent ones?
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to say yes, right? I want to say that the incoming administration realizes the work that they have to do, sort of that immediate work that they have to do, right? And I want to say that they understand that they owe BLM and Black women a lot for this win, because literally we came out in droves to vote for them, and that was what sort of solidified the election, right? So I want to say that they will make strides to make sure that there's restorative justice and inclusion. But I also wonder how they'll go about it, right? So I did some research on the matter, right? And if anybody just Googles Black Lives Matter and Biden, you'll see that these conversations are happening already, right? But it's a matter of, is the administration listening?
Yes,
so for
yes.
example, there's this US Today article that's titled, "Will Biden Embrace Black Lives Matter? Activists Demand Police Reform." And there's sort of two quotes that I want to share from this, piece. And so one is what Biden said during his acceptance speech. And he said, "When this campaign was at its lowest, the African American community stood up again for me. They have always had my back and I'll have yours," right? So he says this as sort of a thank you for electing me and trusting me to stand up for you, right? But then the second quote is from a woman named Mary Hooks, who is a founding member of Black Lives Matter in Atlanta. And she also is co-director of Southerners on New Ground, which is a social justice advocacy organization. And she says, "For decades, Black people have shown up time and time again for a country that consistently tells us that our lives don't matter. Beyond a cheap thank you, we need this administration to be bold and unapologetic about paying that debt through enacting policy changes," right? So you see already the dichotomy that's happening,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Thank you from, President-elect Biden, but also like, okay, thanks is like great, but like we really need, change and things like that. So I think that really already shows you how the conversation is starting to go, right? And I hope the administration is listening. I think that is my hope, is that they're really seeing what the people are saying. But as I mentioned, it's not an overnight solution, right? And he's got a lot of work to do after the past 4 years. That's gonna take, at least the first 2 years of his term, if not longer, right? And if this, election has taught us anything, there's a significant portion of the population that actually doesn't want them to do this work.
Yes,
right?
true.
They wanted
Yes.
the incumbent
The status
presidency.
quo.
And so that's a lot of work to deal with, right? There's a lot of people, more than I think a lot of us thought, in the U.S. that are not really for this, right? So I can't say what will happen, can't really predict what will happen right now, but I'm very hopeful that they will be listening to the people and that they will do their best to enact these policy changes to make sure that Black people, Black women, and all Black lives are protected.
All right, thank you for that. Now tell me, what can we in Africa do to, one, intensify the fight for equity, changing the negative stereotypes that are meted out against us, and also rallying behind the cry of Blacks in America, which is essentially our struggle too? What do you feel Africans can do so that this becomes a united front, not just it's about Black Americans who don't see us as Africans or as people who should be part of their struggle?
So I think, I'm very much interested in this aspect, right? And so, but I can only speak from personal experience. And what I've come to understand is that there's this narrative that people from African countries and African Americans are not going to get along because of cultural differences, right? But I've found, having, traveled a little bit over the world, that that's actually the beauty of it, right? Is that we have these different cultures, but we're still united, right? And I went and lived in Japan for 2 years, a culture completely different than mine, right? So why would be going to Durban, South Africa, or Ghana be treated any differently just because our skin tone might be the same? So I think there's a need for a cross-cultural understanding in order to present a united front, right? And so I think that, cultures really need to understand each other. And I encourage everyone to go travel and really stay somewhere and really learn about the culture. And then I think that's where we'll start to see the change, right? Because it happens sort of what Sister City says, right? It happens on that people-to-people level, right? You had this idea of how America and Chicago was, but then you came here and you realized, like, oh, we are all the same, right? Like, we have the same things that we're fighting for. So I think as much as possible, communication between people from African countries and people from America needs to be happening, right? There's not really that dialogue happening between us. And so I think more conversations will help us to really realize how we can have a united front across the world, right? But we have to be respectful of each other's cultures and our backgrounds and things like that, because a lot of times people think, oh, well, you're black and you're black, so like that should be fine, right? It's like, yes, but there's also an aspect of things that we have to understand to have a mutual respect and really create a united front. So I think we just got to keep talking, and, the internet helps with that and things like that. So I hope we'll keep talking to each other and, following what's going on in each other's cities and countries so that we can support each other and create a united front while being respectful.
Definitely. Let me not hold you up. I think it's a bit early on your end, and it's a bit of an afternoonish for us. But before you go away, I want to play you a bit of South African culture. So this is pop culture, this is youth culture. This is something different to the norm. Some people may not appreciate the genre, but it does influence our youth. And I always believe that the creative arts is a foremost advocate of social evolution. And if we respect artists, we respect and invest in the creative arts, we're essentially going to see so much change faster than we fold our hands and hope for policymakers, politicians, and lawmakers and everyone else to say this is needed by society. So the youth have taken this genre and have said, we want to own this space and we want to speak using this type of music. So I'm going to play you out with Gabza the Small. The song is called Mi Amor. It's dedicated to you, of course. And then the last song I'm going to play for you is Michael Jackson, They Don't Care About Us. Thank you, Miss Ella McCain. Always is a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much, Toki. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please enjoy the song. It's Gabza the Small, Mi Amor, as well as Michael Jackson, They Don't Care About Us. hope the next delegation to Chicago is going to bring such cultures together so that the youth in the States know about the culture in Africa through music.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you so much for the interview. It was lovely having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to see you.
Likewise. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one.
Thank you, ma'am. Cheers.
capitalradio.co.za. Everywhere you go.
Hello, Kim.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. I'm just playing Michael Jackson now. As soon as the song is done, we're going to start with our conversation.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I look
you.
forward to the convo. Speak soon. That was Michael Jackson with They Don't Care About Us. Before that, I played Mi Amor by Kabza the Small featuring Questa, Kufet, as well as DJ Maporisa. That was dedicated to Ella McCain all the way from Chicago, where we were discussing, do Black lives really matter, and what are the implications of having VP Harris as the first Black Asian American woman to go as the next Vice President of America. Next in our conversation, I am speaking with Kim Heller. Hello, Kim. Kim has recently written a very controversial book. Not controversial, I think it's truthful. We need such sobering truths in South Africa, particularly in a time where racial tensions have risen, particularly at a time where we are seeing the overbearance of what they call white monopoly capital, and also how some say the Ramaphosa election was bought in 2017 by private capital, and how that also is translated to the onslaught on state-owned enterprises as well as black executives, and how this is perpetuating a culture or a narrative that seems to be to the leaning that says there is definitely an influence of white supremacy in post-democratic SA. And we also want to see how this then translates into injustices being either directly or indirectly perpetuated, and what is the collusion of the judiciary or the judicial system of South Africa in ensuring that the social structures that were created under apartheid still persist. And unfortunately, obviously, this speaks to the marginalization as well as the perpetual disenfranchisement of black individuals in South Africa. Kim, let us start the conversation. Briefly give our guests, or rather our listeners, who Kim is and why you wrote this very interesting book titled No White Lies.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your show. I see such a prestigious lineup of guests that I feel quite humbled to be part of that. And I've recently, as you said, I've recently written this book, and it deals totally with the issue of white supremacy, that we speak about a democracy, but we still actually in the curtsy of white supremacy.
Yes.
And I think you had asked who I was. I always describe myself as a white settler, and as such, I am a foreigner in this country. We see such antagonism being directed towards the African brothers of the continent, and yet white people are treated royally in this country, and yet we are, including myself, we are the oppressor, and we are an unrepentant oppressor. So what's happened with the Rainbow Nation is that we've just extended our license to maintain white supremacy. And I see this very interesting tendency of white people to describe themselves as African. And I find that so dishonest. I don't believe there's any such thing as a white African. This is the same group of people who took advantage of being a European over years of apartheid, sat on European benches, went to European hospitals, and saw their fellow South Africans suffer and being excluded from these facilities. But now suddenly, it's very trendy to be African. So one of the most controversial descriptions of myself is to say, I'm not an African. There's no such thing as a white African. And I describe myself too, and it's in my book, as a child of privilege, because every single South African, future, current, and past, is a child of privilege. But not only that, a child of unearned privilege on the fractured backbone of black pain and black dispossession. So my book deals with very harsh topics. It deals with issues that we don't want to confront because we are under the spell of being in a rainbow nation. Yet there's been no reconciliation other than blacks reconciling with their poverty and whites reconciling with their privilege.
Yes. Quite piercing, even to me, because when you speak of privilege, I think oftentimes we tend to blanket certain words with certain meanings, and obviously meanings differ according to where you are on the socio-economic scale. And as you rightfully state, most of black people, some may claim to be black middle class, and we have an assumption that because they are closer to privilege or the proximity therein allows them certain privileges. But when they sit in boardrooms, that's when they realize how the influence of white supremacy goes almost through anything and everything that we see. And also give us your impressions of post-democratic South Africa. Is it even democratic to begin with? And what has been your experience or observation of the trends or activities that have taken place since '94?
Well, I think that we celebrated in '94 that we had this democracy, but in real terms, the material conditions of the average black person hasn't changed at all. I mean, the fact that land is still in white hands 26 years into democracy is shameful. It's a sign of an ANC government that is beholden to white interests. I mean, this is land that was stolen. And we don't have white people standing up and saying, here's my land, take it back. But we don't have a government, a so-called black government, saying, let us deal with land, let us return land. So I think instead of celebrating the Rainbow Nation and democracy, we should be mourning for a stillborn democracy and for the fact that what we've done is that there's been a delay in black liberation. I mean, there's no sign of black liberation. All we do is I think I write in one of my articles, which may be in the book, about how the Rainbow Nation actually jackpotted white privilege.
Yes.
I mean, whites have it good in the Rainbow Nation. But what of black people? I mean, we speak about boardrooms, but those boardrooms are occupied by 90% white people. Very little has changed. And that is how we need to evaluate the government. What has it done for the ordinary black person in the street? So what we've got, to me, a government that is putting whites first. And the government has to put blacks first, unconditionally. Whites need to, if they want to stay in this country, they need to be part of the solution. I mean, we are all the problem. I mean, it's interesting you were speaking, and let me be very honest about myself as well. You were speaking about a boardroom. I, as one white person, I can walk into a room and there can be 100 black people, and they'll all start speaking English.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a disgrace, I mean, you could exclude me by speaking in Zulu and I wouldn't understand. And it's because I haven't had to learn Zulu, because such is the structure of our society, that we are on the courtesy of whiteness. And I'm ashamed to say that, but this is the uncomfortable truth of being white in South Africa.
Definitely. And also, I used to enjoy your inputs together with Professor Siepe when we still had 877, which to me was the only independent news channel there was. I see everyone trying to give us news, but I think the narrative they push favors one side. I think you've also seen during the state capture inquiry, the commission of inquiry rather, that the approach is always one-sided. You always see an onslaught on black executives, people who are assumed to be anti-reformation, there's the right term, radical economic transformation, and those who seeming to be siding with white interests almost always get it easy. Why do you feel democracy in South Africa has always had this racial leaning? And obviously, what do you make of people who were instrumental in the closing down of 877? And what was the issue? Was it really the Guptas, or it was maintaining the status quo, the uncomfortable truth of whites are settlers in South Africa? Number two, they also want to always continue being the superior race.
I think, there's a lovely expression, and it's not mine, that white monopoly capital never rests. So RET people or the progressive people in this country, perhaps sometimes I think we think liberation is a game. We sleep, we rest, but white monopoly capital doesn't take chances. ANN7 became too much of an independent voice. And having been on that channel and others, I think it was a very independent channel. I certainly said whatever I wanted.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm sure they weren't happy with what I said. And it was a truly independent station. But yet, I've never had anyone attacking my views, but they will say, you're a Gupta-right, or you're a Zuma person. And, people label, and then you get ostracized. But the truth is that voices that are independent, there's no voice for us in this country at all. And that's why I'm grateful for an opportunity like this. I wrote an article, I'll come back to ANN7. I wrote an article that said, "Dear white South Africans, it's time to return the land."
Yes, I saw it.
It was published on Piet Rompedi's African Times, which I think also closed. It was a brilliant newspaper.
Yes, true.
And that was closed. Within 2 or 3 weeks, it had 400,000 responses. It was featured internationally and across Africa. I invited editors of this country to run that article. No one ran that article because it's too controversial. They don't want that in the media.
Yes.
So ANN7 was closed. I think it's very sad that people called and black people celebrated the closure of that station, including some political parties. And I think they're now regretting it. And I mean, we've just seen in the state capture saga, I mean, we have these people that have been villainized, but there's no evidence against them. We just had Pravin Gordhan saying he has no evidence against Tamayani. And a few years ago, I think it was in 2016, on an international broadcast on CNN, he said he does not, when he was asked, he was saying President Zuma is corrupt. And when the interviewer asked, do you have evidence? He says, no, I don't. But yet we entertain these narratives because we think these people are messiahs. At the same time, we villainize certain people, like the public protector, who I think is doing a sterling job. People are villainizing her. The same with the previous president. So we're in a state of media capture.
And you know, when you speak of media capture, I can't help but get the sense that South Africa is slowly but surely approaching a very soft coup. I think the coup also is happening politically, but I think there's some movement at the grassroots level, which some may seem to see or interpret as civil disorder, or some may see as people basically destroying infrastructure. But I think it's that frustration that people have, that we voted you into power, we're expecting you to fight for our interests and to also make sure that equity, social justice, and the reversal of apartheid-era injustices are done away with. I mean, there was someone who said recently, you had the likes of Pete Porter, F.W. de Klerk, and all these other architects of apartheid who, by declaration of the United Nations, committed crimes against humanity. But none of them have ever been invited to any commission. And one president in particular, I think it was Pete Porter, who actually snapped it. And there was no warrant of arrest against him. He still runs freely. They even have foundations that are dictating the terms of our modern-day democracy. What do you make of that?
No, it's absolutely outrageous, actually. And I mean, we see that F.W. de Klerk, who actually, I mean, his regime was murderous. And as you say, committed crimes against humanity. And yet we had the Speaker of the House, a former MK soldier and freedom fighter, embracing and kissing him. And that is why the tolerance of whiteness is crazy. I wouldn't be surprised in a few years' time if people think that it was black people who created apartheid and black people who actually stole the land, because the narrative is crazy. We're doing a disservice to our country. And one of the things that worries me about the State Capture Commission is the narrow scope of it. I mean, we've never tackled apartheid crime of grand scale. And that is when the public protector has stood up and said, you know, we need to see what APSA did. Let's look at the CX report. And that's been squashed. So I think in one of my articles more recently, I've said, actually, speaking out in the new dawn is a blood sport.
Yes, true.
Because if you dare to speak out, you get damaged. Your career is upset, your finances are upset, you're ostracized. But the villainization of black people, I mean, it's as if corruption has a black face now. And I think we're creating a terrible, terrible narrative. And the embrace of these apartheid leaders is terrible. And also looking at the foundations. You know, I was actually blocked the other day by a very well-known talk show host because he referred to AfriForum as a civil rights group.
Wow.
And I said to him, how does the media, mainstream media, primetime show, speak about a racist group as a civil rights movement? What kind of narrative are we saying? And yet then we have another journalist, white journalist, speaking about the former president, Jacob Zuma. Whatever you think of him, he described him as a maggot. And we allow that. And those kind of articles are celebrated. You know, and so blackness is completely being degraded into a junk status that I think black life remains very cheap in this rainbow nation of ours.
Definitely, and it's the conversation I had with our previous guest, Ella McCain from Chicago, where I was asking, does she see any reforms happening because of the Black Lives Matter movement? That's one. But number two, also, are these social injustices that we speak of about to go away anytime soon? And the answer is a resounding no, because as you rightfully state, the structuration of the policies as well as the legal framework that enthroned apartheid still exists. You've got justices who have no interest in changing anything. If anything, they tend to vilify the lawyers or the legal administrators who want to see change. And now you have people, as you rightfully state, like the public protector, who are saying, let's look at justice. This is what I've been appointed to do to protect the public. But the same politicians, the same financiers, and the same collusive forces that always almost create soft coups in countries are at play in South Africa. And this is why I'm saying we are most likely to see a very, very disturbing civil disorder that's going to take place out of frustrations that one are borne by politicians. And I think also you've witnessed during the riotous squandering of COVID funds, 500 billion that's not been accounted for, yet one person has been chased for over 16 years, over 700 charges against one individual, but not even one has been proven to be true. And you've got a commission that has cost us, the taxpayer, in a time when the government is borrowing heavily from external funders, close to 1 billion, but there's not been a shred of evidence against this individual. And you ask yourself, was the ANC government voted in power by black people? Yes. But are they representing white or black interests? And the answer is white interests. Why is it so? Why do you think it's so?
Well, I think the compromise was, whether it was just because of a lack of experience or poor ideology. You know, in my book, I speak about the Freedom Charter as being the moment that the ANC lost the plot, literally, because it was a doctrine. It was a doctrine of compromise,
yes,
and
true.
it actually accommodated the former oppressor into a system. So it legitimized white supremacy. So we shouldn't be surprised now that we have an anti-black constitution and an anti-black judiciary, because that's what the Freedom Charter allowed. In fact, I often describe myself as a recovering charterist, because I don't believe in, and I'm happily so, I don't believe in reconciliation. When have white people have shown any will to admit culpability and start saying, how do we redistribute land? So the truth is, I think the ANC is a white party. You know, I was a very devout member of the ANC, and it broke my heart to see what happened in Marikana, at which point I joined my former university colleague, Dalim Polfo, at EFF, and I was there for a few years. And I realized, it broke my heart to say that the ANC is a party of white supremacy. And you just have to look at, and I've mentioned in the beginning, the fact that land hasn't been redistributed.
Yes.
You know, I was at the ANC Land Summit. I was invited, and I think they regret it because I was quite outspoken. And I said, watch this space. The ANC will never take land back from whites. It will never take prime land back from whites. They're going to redistribute tribal land and unused land.
Yes, true.
But what about the original sin of corruption in this country, which was land theft? And they won't tackle that because they are terrified of whiteness. They're controlled by whiteness. And it's a sad realization. It pained me because it was a party I believed in. And, you know, the interesting thing, I was at EFF and for a while, but I also don't believe, I've reformed myself. I don't believe that black organizations should have white members. I think white members are destructive. So within the ANC, I think the ANC is controlled by some of their white members, and they write up the policies and they dictate, and their masters are sitting in London and, you know, across the boardrooms of South Africa. So we should welcome spaces like a party that I really respect, BLF, where they're fighting to maintain a black space. And yet in South Africa, there's objections to the BLF being a black-only party. It's crazy. You know, I think that there's mental capture that black people have to find a space in their own country. And, you know, it's actually criminal. We just see every year there's shack fires and we accept it because people are congested in their own land. People are living like pariahs, while white people are living as masters of great estates. You know, there's no justice. And I don't know that there will be justice in this country. But what I've said, and it's been a controversial statement elsewhere, is that I've said black people must stop relying on white people to change. White people are not going to change in this country. And I think this benevolence towards white people must stop. And the country is not going to do any good until the black child comes first, and the dignity of a black child comes first. And black people and white people must accept that. That is the only way forward. And until the ANC accepts that, then we have to say they're a white party. I mean, what really, I get angry, you can see, because
yes,
there's been so little change, and I think people should start being impatient now.
And tell me, Kim, as your parting shot, what do you make of the government allowing Orania to exist in South Africa, a state within a state, and there's also Eureka, and you've got some people at some point who were hoping for a secession of Cape Town, essentially. And I know before the so-called democratic transition, some people wanted to keep the Northwest for themselves. Is this what democracy is in South Africa, or is this the power of white supremacy?
I think in a way, and I hope this is not a very, it probably will be a controversial statement. In a way, you have to admire white supremacy because they look after their own interests.
Very true.
So the Oranias, actually, we should say that's fabulous, because maybe black people did that and didn't rely on white people there would be a better situation. So you have to admire the self-interest that you have in these communities. So I don't really have a problem like that. In fact, I just believe the whole of South Africa is a colony. I mean, we are not a country, we're a colony, and we are still dictated to by apartheid logic, by colonial logic, by the power relations of the economy have not changed. So I don't think these issues of whether there's a little tribe of Orania Afrikaners here or there makes much of a difference. Let them do that. But if black people were focused on their communities and not so eager to get white affirmation, for instance, I think that things would be a lot better. I always find it interesting that black people are always seeking white approval, but white people don't really care about black people. That's an inconvenient truth. So we need to face some hard questions and ask the right questions about this country.
Most definitely. And tell us, where can people get your book titled No White Lies? I think based on the conversation we've had, one is interested definitely in reading more. And I hope it doesn't just end as a book that's in a bookshelf somewhere, but I hope that the conversations and the insights in there become seminal points where people are going to converge. You can look at black leadership, you can look at traditional leaders and all structures where they sit down and look at the hard truths that you've written about, and each one must ask themselves, I'm a black person in Africa, and there's a ruling party supposedly created to fight for my own right to exist as a human being, but it hasn't done that. Do we need participatory democracy? Do we need electioneering? Do we even need the ANC? Or, as you rightfully state, we need a system that is similar to Orania, where self-preservation, self-identification, as well as self-determination become the founding pillars of our survival and existence as humans.
Exactly. Self-determination, absolutely. My book will be in bookstores from mid-January, and at Exara Bookshops, which is a lovely progressive bookshop in Midrand, and available through me if people want to email me at kimheller.writer@gmail.com. And I would love criticism. I'm open to discussions. Let's debate these. Let's hope the book raises some difficult issues. And I already have a platform in January. There's going to be a launch where the person has said he wants to challenge a lot of my views, and I welcome that. Let's have hard conversations.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been such a pleasure for me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the time. Obviously, the podcast as well as the entire recording of our session will be available. I think it's streaming currently on both Mixcloud and YouTube. It's found there now. You can download it immediately when we're done. And let me play you out with Nina Simone. I know you love Nina Simone. I'm going to play a song called I Wish I Knew How It Felt to Be Free. And then the next one is going to be Letambulu, Not Yet Uhuru, because South Africa is not yet Uhuru.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Have a lovely day ahead.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud, say them clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that every man should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know, yeah. And I'd sing, 'cause I know, yeah. And I'd sing, 'cause I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be free. Yeah, yeah, I know how it feels. Yes, I know how it feels. How it feels to be free.
And that was Nina Simone, and the song was I Wish I Knew How It Feels to Be Free. Next, I'm going to play Letambulu Not Yet Uhuru while I wait for my last guest to connect with me via Zoom so we can have a very inspiring and thought-provoking interview. Please enjoy the song Letambulu Not Yet Uhuru.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll shortly be landing at Jansmans Airport. Please fasten your seatbelts and extinguish your cigarettes. Thank you.
Wethu Ngubo. Testing 1 2 1 2.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right, my brother. Maybe I should just fade Letambulu and let's start with our conversation so that you also have a bit of time for our conversation. So what I'm going to do is build our discussion sort of like a conversation more than a Q&A per se, right?
Okay.
All right, maybe let's start. I'm going to fade the song and then in less than a minute we're going to start, right? Sure, thanks. That was Letambulu, and the song is Not Yet Uhuru. This was a dedication to Kim Heller, whom I've just had an interview with. She has a beautiful book that she's written. It's called No White Lies, which looks at post-apartheid South Africa and how the democratic franchise seems to have been captured by white monopoly capital. Next, I'm going to be in conversation with Mohoto Ngubo, and we're going to be looking at the topic of black health and African biomineral balance. Mohoto Ngubo, thank you for your time. How do you do today?
I'm well, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for according me the opportunity. Yes, I'm well, under the grace of our ancestors.
Great stuff. Without any further ado, give us an intro into who Mohoto Ngubo is.
Mohoto Ngubo is a plant-based fitness enthusiast. Basically, I'm an athlete, vegan athlete, powered by plants. I take great interest in the subject of black health, which is obviously brought about by the current state of black health we find ourselves in, and the lack of interest in trying to reverse the biological violation of our race.
Definitely. And some may say the subject is a bit controversial because some have, I won't say a proven idea of what happened to Dr. Sebi, but I'm sure you followed Dr. Sebi, and you know also that he was a huge proponent of the same school of thought that you advance. How did you observe, sympathize with, and react to COVID-19, TB, and HIV/AIDS vis-a-vis the idea that our biomineral composition as black individuals differs obviously from that of other races?
Sorry, come again. I didn't get that.
No problem.
Sorry.
So my question to you was, we've recently had the crazed COVID-19, which some have said to be a biochemical warfare of sorts that's meted out for economic and political reasons. And also you had the celebrity called HIV/AIDS, which we celebrated, or rather recognized on the 1st of December. And we've always had tuberculosis in South Africa. You've got scientists who could create cures, but the scientific community hasn't done so. And now you are saying there's what we call black biomineral science. How do you think black biomineral science can stem the tide of these epidemics I just made mention of?
Okay, my brother, thank you for that. Look, I think we would be living in an elusive world to believe that these things were not done deliberately. Mm-hmm. You know, when we listen to black historians, they will tell us about Kemet, they will tell us about how great we were as the black race, you know, that our history didn't start with slavery. Mm. No one has really looked into what happened to black people. Why is it that when you look into the ancient times, you will not, when you try to locate us back in time, you will not come across things like tuberculosis or anything similar. You will not come across, in fact, any other pandemic until the time where there was an invasion into our shores. So that on its own will tell you that clearly something was done, there was a violation. Mm. So I always treat any pandemic that comes to our shores with suspicion. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the response, so obviously, I just quickly want us to look at the black compromised immune system. So black people are immunocompromised currently, mm-hmm. and that is simply because of we had altered our ancient diets, right? But we need to also understand, so that was deliberate, right? I want to take you back to as recent as 2015, right? Mm. There was what they call the STG3 that was signed, which meant that by 2030, there is an immunization 2030 document that has got an addendum about 17 goals stating that everyone needs to be vaccinated, meaning everything with eyes needs to be vaccinated. So this was a declaration, the STG3 declaration of 2015. Now we need to understand that the involvement here, your FDA is involved, but the very interesting thing is, how did this thing started with of the vaccinations? In 1986, under President Kennedy, the Americans actually started this thing, but the interesting thing is that it was to be kept, the vaccination costs that started were to be kept independent of the American judiciary system, so that no one could actually go and sue these vaccination companies in the event of there being other after effects when we take these vaccinations. So you understand, when you talk about mass extinction of people, this was systematic mass extinction of people, and obviously the biggest victims of this thing being black people. So it is people like Dr. Sebi who actually alerted us, and the likes of Dr. Laila Africa, may their souls rest in peace or rise in power. It's people like those who did studies independent of the allopathic response, who actually started taking us to the biomineral balance studies, because remember, we've got different biological disparities, so we can't have a standard health system. So yes. Okay, maybe let me stop there.
You were coming along so well. And tell me, give us your definition or comparative analysis of what black biology is versus other alternatives.
Okay, so we are black people who have a composition of 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neurons. And our chemistry of life becoming the CHO, which is a carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So we are people. What actually makes us black is actually it means that we actually have got the contain the biggest or the highest content of carbon. So meaning that we cannot therefore be subjected to the same biological response as people who are genetically inferior to us as black people, African people to be specific.
Definitely. Thank you for that definition. What are we not understanding about the effects of misaligning our biomineral composition with dominant narratives like you earlier alluded to, which are promoting vaccines versus healing through food or using plant biology?
Yeah. So thank you for this. In fact, I want to take this thing to divert a little bit. So in the US, in the last 40 years, there's been biologists who have actually taken a different approach to healing, where they have done an intensive study to say why is it that oh, sorry. So the study was, I'm going to start in 1974. The Prime Minister of China was hospitalized with bladder cancer. Now what happened is, when he was hospitalized with bladder cancer, instead of going out and going to the best hospitals in the world at the time, he actually took 650,000 researchers to actually research that what were the causes of cancer in China. And what happened is that they made over 800 million Chinese people had undergone the study. And 2 years later, they actually found the relationship was between nutrition and sickness. So the food we ate had everything to do with people who were later diagnosed with cancer. Now then, there were two researchers, world-renowned researchers. One was Dr. Esselstyn. One was Dr. Colin T. Campbell. Dr. Esselstyn, by the way, has been suspended by the American Science Council, and in one of the universities where he was raising funds for research, they've also suspended him and suspended the funds because remember, he is coming with an alternative to medicine, to medication, to say there is a response. The response is not the pill. The response is spinach. The response is not the pill. The response is lentils. The response is not the pill. The response is chickpeas. The response is not the pill. The response is plant-based. A whole food plant-based diet has been proven that it will reverse all lifestyle diseases because they happen as a result of the food that we eat. Now this thing goes back to what I initially said, that where did the violation come in? When our diet was altered as Africans. And when you look at the food that they eat, because they've got what they call the SAD, the Sickening American Diet. The Sickening American Diet is actually refined foods, nothing whole food. You understand? And most of this food is food that was eaten by the Maya people in South American parts of the Caribbean. It's food that was eaten, and a lot of food that was eaten by the African people in Africa. So we were people who were actually responding to nature, who didn't have to go to nutrition school or to become nutritional scientists, but we understood the rules of nature. Our ancestors understood these things. So it is now only becoming groundbreaking research within the allopathic circles, in the Western circles, because they've then realized that 500,000 people in the US undergo bypass surgery because of coronary artery disease. And all of these things are as a result of diet. Now, I know you've mentioned Dr. Sebi, but I've mentioned these two white researchers on purpose because they knew that Dr. Sebi was way ahead of his time and Dr. Lala Africa were way ahead of their time because they have always recommended nutrition as a response, to say the pill is not the response, chemotherapy is not a response, the response is food that has got non-toxic properties in it. Because remember, the food that you eat either feeds the cells or hurts the cells. If it's whole food, it will not hurt the cells. If it's refined, if it's GMO, it's going to make you sick. It is not food. It is nothing that Mother Nature gave us. Mother Nature supports life. So there's absolutely no way Mother Nature can then not respond to any violation to the biology. So that has always been our ancestral approach. And black people today are the ones who do not understand that they are being fed poison. And then when they are sick, and then they are taken to medication. So there is no money in healthy people. There is no money in dead people. Where is the money? The money is in sick people that you keep alive, but through treatment. So allopathic medicine does not heal. Allopathic medicine treats, but we talk about healing through nutrition. So there is the unique difference here.
And tell me, my brother, with regards to your most interesting or research findings, what would you say are things that we are taking for granted or are intentionally being diverted against so that, as you rightfully state, our state of unhealthiness remains in perpetuity?
Sorry, come again. My network is a bit offish. Sorry,
no problem. I'm saying, what's been your recent interesting finds with regards to how you are rightfully stating now that most of us are often taking things for granted, meaning nutrition we take for granted, right? Because I think most of us tend to eat for taste more than deducing nutritional value from food. What's been your recent findings which are against going through the allopathic route, but also engaging a much more preventative strategy where we eat for health and purpose-driven lives?
Okay. Yeah, just before I get into the answer, I also want to bring this to your attention that, see, this thing was all colonial in a sense that when people are landless, right? When you take land from people, remember there is a basis of independence. You take their ability to produce their own food. You take their ability to take control of their health. Now, when people cannot produce their own food, it means that you are going to make food for them as their oppressor. Now, why would you want to give them whole foods and then sabotage the whole colonial project? or rather the neo-colonial project in 2020. Now, for me, I can tell you one thing. There are things that our people ancestrally in the villages or your small towns used to have as basic nutrition. And our people have actually now totally moved away from that. And sometimes there's this misconception of the class society. So if you move to your bigger cities, you have to eat in a certain way. You know, when you start earning great salaries, and then you go to your steers, you go to your all these posh restaurants that actually do not sell people food. You know, you buy food at Woolies, food that has got preservatives because you have been sold Woolworths as the pinnacle of health, or rather cleanliness, but we do not know what we eat. We do not have the knowledge as to what is food and what is not food. So that is where the problem comes in the education part of it. Our people do not know that what they eat is not food. You know, whatever you pass through the lips is not necessarily food. And all of this goes back to landlessness. When people cannot grow their own food, control the land, produce their food, then anyone can give them what they think is food. And those people are part of the value chain system of pharmaceuticals that will not survive if the country has got healthy people.
Most definitely. My brother, sorry to cut you there. I was saying in the interest of time, I'm going to invite you to please share briefly your concluding remarks so that I play you out with a good track, and then we perhaps schedule a different day for an expansion of this conversation, because it's one that is definitely a must-have. And I think the timing of it also has to be expanded for us to deduce the great value that it has.
Yes. I think education is important. People need to understand that nutritional education is extremely important. We need to understand the power of food, whole food, plant-based specifically, its ability and its proven scientific research. It's been scientifically proven on its powerful ability to reverse all lifestyle diseases. It has happened. I myself as an athlete have seen the ability of a plant-based diet and how powerful it is to give you great athletic ability. So there's absolutely nothing negative about this lifestyle. People just need to understand that there is an alternative. We can actually say no to allopathic medicine. We must go back to the ways of our forefathers, but also we do not need to be a sick nation, because when you eat whole foods, you actually create a conducive environment for the body to actually fight any ailments that try to attack it. So the body actually has got its own defense system. You keep the body healthy, you keep the body clean at all times, you will not have to actually worry about any form of medication, because as the famous phrase says, let food be thy medicine. So I'm actually an advocate of this, that there's a great relationship between wellness and nutrition. And the more people understand this, the better. But there's a lot of work for us to do. I'm in this space to actually create awareness, or recreate awareness, because remember, it is nothing new to us. It is something that can be traced to be our thing when you try to locate us in space and time as Black people. So we actually need to actually go back as part of the Sankofa project, to actually go back to understanding that this is who we were previously. There's nothing new about this.
Thank you so much, my brother. I wish you a blessed day ahead. And again, thank you for sharing insight with us on This is Africa this Saturday, the 5th of December, 2020. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you to our beloved listeners for making This is Africa a good show to listen to. Today, as I've said, we had an assortment of conversations with noteworthy and influential guests. Opening our list was Professor Ngeba Taleni, who was assisting us understand how much worth traditional medicine contributes towards the wellness of society and humanity as a whole. Number 2, we had Lynette Gunnison, who was speaking about fashion and the politics of resistance and everything that is social evolution. Third, after that, we had a Womandla segment where we hosted Dr. Simangele Kumete. After her, we spoke with Ella McCain all the way from Chicago, where we were speaking about Black Lives Matter and what the newly elected presidency in America is going to see change. And the last segment we've had was populated by both Kim Heller, who wrote a book called No White Lies, and our last guest was Mr. Wetungubo, who was speaking about African biomineral balance as well as black health. Thank you so much. I'm going to play out with Andrea Pocelli, Time to Say Goodbye. And next up, we're going to have DJ Sada, who's going to host the Saturday Night Fever. Please find us on Mixcloud. We are on YouTube. We are on Radio Garden app, and we're also found on www.capitalradio.co.za, Salagahle, and Maibuye Africa.
Solo sogno all'orizzonte mancano le parole. Sì, lo so che non c'è luce in una stanza quando manca il sole. Se non ci sei tu con me, sì. Le finestre mostrar tutto il mio cuore che è acceso. Chiudi dentro me la luce che ho incontrato per strada. Time to say goodbye. Paesi che non ho mai veduto e vissuto con te. Adesso sì li vivrò con te. Partirò su navi per mari che io lo so non esistono più. It's time to say goodbye.
Quando sei lontana sogno